Florida Republican Congressman Brian Mast, now chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Great to see you. Chairman, I am curious because of your military background, so much that you can bring to us with that perspective now, what you are particularly watching for.
I am curious about how many were supposed to be on board that Black Hawk as well under normal training conditions or normal operating conditions, because when you think about the question of how many people were in the air traffic control tower, it also matters how many were in that bird, because everybody in those birds, they're not just along for the ride. They are also sensors to what's going on. What other traffic do they see in the area? Constantly looking around for anything that might be in their pattern, whether it be a bird or another aircraft or something that indicates they were flying too low that the pilot didn't see. So that is another question to me as well about how many were in the bird and how many were in the tower.
Well, we know 3 were inside that helicopter. What does that tell you?
It tells me it was probably a little light. I would have expected that there would have been a crew probably of 4 to 5.
Wow. Well, let's get to this. More from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who was on with our Fox and Friends crew this morning talking about military training.
And we're not going to stop training, even though there's a pause on this unit, on this exercise, which is an important one, and we should have that pause until we get to the bottom of this. We have to train. There are ways to do that mitigates risk, right? And that's our job at the Defense Department, at the U.S. Army, is make sure we're mitigating risk when training has happened, especially when it's around civilian aircraft. At the same time, how do we make sure we train as robustly as possible, as safely as possible, to ensure if unfortunately, there were a real-world event where things needed to happen, we could respond to it.
So, Chairman Mast, it is interesting that you bring up the point, did you have the right amount of people inside the helicopter? The SecDef now, Hegseth, brings up the point, were they doing training the way that it needed to be done? All of this is painting what picture as we go forward, just in terms of collecting information for the investigation?
Yeah, it is. And we are going to have all of these questions until we can put the puzzle pieces together, from audio recordings from the Black Hawk, audio recordings from the tower, audio recordings from the airliner, any visual surveillance that may have taken place anywhere in those flight paths, from cameras that would have been in those flight paths, you name it. Until we get all those puzzle pieces together, we have to keep asking these questions. NTSB will absolutely do that, but you can certainly count on in the House of Representatives. I sit on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee as well. That will be doing oversight of this, and you can believe that the Armed Services Committee will certainly do oversight, because we have both Americans and American soldiers that were killed.
So talk to me about moving forward and this airspace issue. This is not the only place where you see military and civilian aircraft sharing airspace around an airport. I mean, you'll see that wherever they are stationed. You'll see National Guard. You know, sometimes you're landing at airports, you'll see the big National Guard planes off to the right as you're landing, or the left, wherever their hangars are. This is not uncommon. So does that change in the future, not just here or elsewhere?
I don't know that it changes. Obviously, we do not want the civilian space to be treated like a battlefield training ground necessarily. That's not a danger that civilians need to be put in. For those that are in service, of course, we deal with taking small arms and large arms fire from the ground, air-to-air combat in different ways that could take place in those real combat scenarios. But that doesn't mean that the civilian population needs to be exposed to that. I know it's been spoken about by certainly some of my colleagues that the particular approach to DCA in Washington, D.C. is a little bit hairier than others when you consider that those aircraft can't fly over the White House or the Pentagon or the Capitol or other places. It is always a very unique approach compared to many airports out there.
You always get right to the point. I love that. And I totally get what you're saying. And that's important
focus.
too.
You're in focus.
I know, we're all in focus, because my dad used to say the same thing about how close you were to the Potomac when he was flying in and out, because he was at the Pentagon. And he would say, yeah, this is difficult. It was difficult then for that airspace. And you add now more traffic, more people decades later, and it certainly is now. I want to talk to you about some of the stuff that happened on Capitol Hill yesterday. It got really dramatic. 3 of President Trump's most controversial cabinet choices had confirmation hearings, as you know. Health and Human Services pick Robert F. Kennedy Jr., FBI Director nominee Kash Patel, and Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's choice for Director of National Intelligence. Here's a taste.
The problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress, too.
Oh, no,
and protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you.
In 2020, you were the single largest
Because I had
receiver of
small
pharmaceutical money.
contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
You were the
not a nickel from corporate
Bernie,
tax.
you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No.
I want you to turn around. There are Capitol Police officers behind you. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles.
That's an abject lie, and you know it. I've never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these men and women, as you know.
You
my entire
glorified
life.
it.
Sure
This
that
is
there
not a moment for
Snowden-like
social
leak.
media. It's not a moment to propagate theories. Yes or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
As someone who has
I'll go on
worn
to my
our uniform
questions.
in combat, I understand how critical our national security
Apparently
is.
you don't. Apparently you don't.
Democrat shout-splaining. Well, Vice President J.D. Vance gave Sean Hannity this prediction.
I do believe they're going to get across the finish line, Sean, but we're going to have to fight for each one. And I think what makes President Trump's leadership so effective is he's willing to listen to Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, but also he's willing to listen to Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard. They're all part of the family now. We can't say you're not going to get confirmed because we disagree with you on one issue. The president makes these decisions, and he already has.
Chairman Mast, anybody who's on the bubble after yesterday that you can see?
Yeah, there's no question that I've heard there's a few on the bubble. I'm not going to speak to specific names, but I think they have to come to it with this focus. If they will quit on one, because quitting is a disease, it's a cancer. If they will quit on one of President Trump's nominees, they will find excuses to quit on 3, 4, 5 of his nominees moving forward in the future. And I think you look at them holistically, and let's throw Pete Hegseth in there as well. And what you see are agents of change, people that are saying, I don't accept the status quo of Washington, D.C. And for that reason, I think every cubicle and every law office and every high rise in Washington, D.C. is absolutely against these non-establishment picks.
I love that. Great messaging for everybody. Don't quit. It's America. Chairman Mast, thank you for joining me.
Wish you the best.
You too.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe. I will be back on YouTube with more exclusive content, so stay tuned.